welcome back to the show. I'm here with Christian Taylor.
Hi.
I caught you.
I know.
You were on your phone. Hey, you're too far from your mic.
Okay.
Get your mic over
Sorry,
there.
I was texting my husband. Just wanted to let
Right
him
now?
know. Radio silence.
That's what they always say.
I always have
Right
to tell
now?
him I'm going into radio silence.
Okay, we're about to start now. Okay. And Sky Jitani.
Hi.
Are you, you're not
At least
texting
my
yet?
husband doesn't call me during the podcast, you know.
I'm on airplane mode.
Oh, you're on
You're-
airplane mode
I'm on
today.
airplane mode.
You personally or your phone?
My phone.
Okay.
I
Just,
think you personally would be
Personally,
funnier.
well,
Just
then I'd
type.
have a face mask on and some earbuds in my ears.
yeah, and an inflatable neck
Right.
pillow.
I actually
with
bought
an
this
animal head on it.
for that long trip we did last fall. I bought this, supposed to be like the best travel pillow ever. It cost me like $30.
How was it?
It was amazing.
Really?
Really?
Can I borrow it?
Do you still have it, or did you dispose
No,
of
I
it
still have
afterwards?
it. I still have it. We all kind of fought over it because we only bought one because they were so expensive. And they always claim that's the best
Why
travel.
is it so great?
It's called the J pillow.
The J pillow, and
Yeah.
is that the only reason it's so great? 'Cause
No,
it's
it's just
named.
it looks really
Is it
dumb.
named after Jimmy Walker?
JJ?
J.J. Walker?
No.
Dynamite!
I knew that was
that
coming.
guy? Okay.
Anyway, it was expensive, but it was worth it. It was really good.
Wow. And that's what we're talking about today on the show.
If the J Pillow would like to sponsor the Phil Vischer
Travel
podcast,
pillows with Sky. It's travel tips.
Hey,
with
if
Sky.
we'd
It's a
had
new
this
segment.
conversation last week, you
Yeah.
could have taken it with you to
Yeah.
Jamaica.
You know, man, I just got back from Jamaica, man. I had the 5 days in Jamaica with my lovely wife, Lisa. She won it for selling oil to the Arabs.
No.
Selling oil.
To people like me.
Essential oil to people like Christian, man. And now she's all purple.
I am.
Man.
Christmas is over.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to do the theme song Jamaican.
do you have a Jamaican character?
No, man.
He's not allowed.
Don't listen.
Not in the DreamWorks production anyway, man. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. This is harder than it looks. And we got hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Sky
Hello, man.
and Christian too.
Hello, man.
And we ain't got no guest, no guest here for you. But that's okay, we got some good jerk chicken. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. I had some good jerk chicken, actually.
Did you?
It's pretty good, although it's not all that different than just barbecue chicken with barbecue.
Was it spicy?
sauce. It's spicier.
It's
yeah.
different spice. Jerk
Yes,
spices.
It's slightly different.
They're rude.
Do you know who created jerk seasoning? It's history lesson of the day.
No, please go. Tell us.
Do you know who created jerk seasoning?
I do
Who?
not.
It was created in Jamaica by
Bob Marley.
the Maroons. Do you know
Okay.
who the Maroons are?
No? Who are they?
The Maroons were escaped slaves that escaped from the plantations in Jamaica and escaped up into the mountains and then ended up developing their own society in the mountains where if you went up there even looking for them, you would get killed, man.
Oh.
And there were wars between the Maroons and the plantation owners. And jerk seasoning is one of the things that developed out of the Maroon culture in the
Did you get this from a
That's a
tour
great
guide
history
in
lesson.
Jamaica?
I actually knew this before I went.
Wasn't that an insult in like the Warner Brother cartoons with Bugs Bunny?
Yeah.
What a maroon! Didn't he
Yeah,
used
what
to
a
say-
maroon. I
How
wonder
do
if
you
that's where
remember
that came
that?
from.
I have no
I think they might have used
idea.
that insult in Who
Or
Framed Roger Rabbit.
Was it
too.
macaroon?
What a macaroon.
No, it was maroon.
Ah, what a maroon. Yeah.
I didn't know
So-
that had racial slave connotations to it. Now I
that's a
can't
little
use it anymore, can I?
Yeah.
So the Jamaican people,
Man.
Jamaica was originally settled by the
People
Dutch.
By the Carib
were
Indians.
first. Well, there were indigenous peoples.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the Spanish came. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Columbus, I think he landed in there
I don't
at
know if
one
he got to
point.
Jamaica,
No.
did he?
Well, maybe his brother did. I don't know. And then the Spanish, and then the British took it from the Spanish because they wanted one big island in the Caribbean to have as their own so they could primarily to mount raids on the
On the
Spanish.
on the Spanish.
In the New World.
Okay.
Yeah, so they did that. And that's where, do you know who Henry Morgan is?
Morgan Rum.
Right, Henry Morgan's spiced rum.
Yeah.
I thought that was Captain
Why
Morgan.
is the rum
Yeah, he was a
always
captain.
gone?
Captain Henry Morgan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Captain Henry Morgan. He was actually a buccaneer, which is a type of pirate.
And all this is true?
Of course.
Okay.
Christian,
It's just hard when we're talking about
I have
Captain
never
Morgan
told
rum.
you anything that is not true.
Well, now that is not true.
Okay, just that. But just that thing I just said is the only thing I've ever told you that isn't true. So Captain Morgan, he was a buccaneer, a privateer. So he was hired, he was paid by the British Crown to raid Spanish gold ships.
All right.
Basically, to work as a pirate in the Caribbean, raid Spanish, that's where Spanish gold, Spanish gold.
Not too bad of a job.
And then you would split your take with the British Crown.
Okay.
So you had kind of license to steal, basically. Right. He was so good at it and built such a large following that he actually had his own little army. And at one point, I think he single-handedly invaded Panama. Just with him and his own little army. And,
wow.
the British were so impressed that they said, you can be the governor of Jamaica. And so he was a pirate who became the governor of Jamaica.
How about that?
Yeah, man. And they made the rum.
Sounds like the plot for the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
And then The Tourist, which starts shooting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Wait a minute. They're doing another one?
Of course they are, as long as they make money.
5 starts shooting in 2 weeks.
Wow.
After Johnny Depp didn't do so well with Mordecai this weekend.
Oh, it didn't do well?
No, 4 million.
I was wondering if that
4
kind of
million
looked
on
interesting.
2,300 screens. That's terrible. That would qualify as terrible.
I thought I liked that new and different character, but I've only seen the trailer.
But his characters, when he does weird characters, they need to be in the context. Like that character seemed like it should have been in a Wes Anderson film. Like he should have been in the Grand Budapest Hotel or something.
That's true. Very stylized.
Not in the real world trying to hold a whole film together.
Right.
And so he needs to stop doing that. He needs to play, if he's going to play characters that are that caricatured, they need to be side characters.
Right.
Not like, it's my movie. I'm carrying the whole movie. So he has 3 bombs in a row now, which may mean I guess that's why he's doing
What were the other 2?
Pirates of the Caribbean 5. Transcendence and another one.
And another one.
He was into the woods. He was just the wolf, though.
Yeah, but he wasn't. That didn't count.
That didn't count.
Okay. Sky has a story that he really
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Sky usually doesn't submit stories unless it's something very special.
A minute.
Important.
Wait a minute.
Really significant.
Stop. Everyone, full stop. Phil came back last night from Jamaica. He warned us that he didn't have content. So early this morning, I had to get up super early because my daughter's now on the middle school basketball team and she has practice in the morning. So very early in the morning, I was reading articles and I just decided to send Phil whatever random stuff I thought was kind of weird. So this is not a reflection of my highest interests or values.
The first thing that Sky sends in is an article with the heading, "A Victory for the Right to Pee Standing Up." Thursday brought an advance in the cause of standing up to pee. A judge in the German city of Dusseldorf. Speaking of peeing standing up, is that the German word for peeing standing up?
No, it's later in the article.
Dusseldorf ruled in favor of a man suing his landlord for a full refund of his security deposit, which had been partially withheld because the marble floor of the tenant's bathroom had been damaged by uric acid, presumably from the errant urine of an upright person relieving himself.
Well, that is more of being a careless male than a problem of standing peeing up.
Coming from the mother of multiple boys.
5 boys in my house.
Males.
That is lazy peeing, if you ask me.
The judge said, someone who still practices this previously dominant custom is regularly confronted with significant disputes, particularly with female cohabitants. However, normally he must not reckon with damage to the marble floor of a bathroom or guest toilet. Despite the increasing domestication of men in this area, urinating while standing up is indeed still common practice.
Wait a minute. How is standing up when you pee undomesticated?
Because it's how manly men pee.
It's how men, period, pee. It's not just manly men.
What I want to know is
less common, Sky.
Who is telling them to sit down?
Their wives.
And the landlords.
I would never tell them that. I just tell them either to A, lift the toilet, or please clean up after yourself.
Well, in the article,
toilet
lift the seat.
And pee directly into the floor.
Okay, I just have a more relevant question. Why does this have anything to do with Christianity?
Well, you'd have to ask Sky that, because he's the one who submitted this story. He felt that this could carry a whole hour.
I did not say that. I just said...
The common theme was how this relates to our Christian faith.
First of all right, I want to go back.
Culture.
exhibit number A, letter A, whatever.
Yeah.
Did I anywhere in that email say, hey, this would be great for the podcast?
Just the act of sending it to me implies as much.
There are many things I send to
Why would
you
you
which
send
don't
it?
necessarily.
You're just trying to say, hey, this is hysterical.
Hey, do you be standing up?
I just think it's
Love
funny
Sky.
that in Germany, this is an actual like social issue that's reaching the courts now because there are so many public spaces where there are
Yeah.
signs posted and they actually have created toilet seats now that if you try to lift it up, like most men do when they go to the bathroom, the seat will tell you this is a facility
not
in which you
for
have to
that.
sit down and pee.
Why? That
The
is, to
German
me,
word-
that is so emasculating.
Exactly.
The German word for men who sit down is Sitzpinklers. Men who sit down when they pee are called Sitzpinklers.
Okay.
Isn't that fantastic? Are you a
I think the fact
Sitzpinkler?
that they're identified with sprinklers is part of the problem, isn't it?
In 2004, for example, the Telegraph reported that Sitzpinkler had become a synonym for wimp.
Yes, it's emasculating.
Yeah, a Stehpinkler is a man who stand up to pee. Stehpinkler or Sitzpinkler.
This is really going on in Germany.
Yes, it is.
You know, with
Is that because
everything-
there's a woman chancellor these days or something?
Oh, yeah,
Angela
I
Merkel?
think she's mad about it. She's really up in arms. Okay, that's
Don't they have anything better to do?
You would think.
that story. So I was gone for a whole week, and that
That's
is
all
the
we got.
best that Sky could
Hey, it's
do.
not that I could come up with 10 other stories right now that are better than that one. You guys are just making me look dumb.
That is not possible.
No,
you know,
we're not making
that is
you
not
look
possible.
dumb.
There is no
You're
way to
making
make
you look dumb. You Stitzpinkler. We've mentioned a lot. There was a good piece in. This is the kind of story that I bring in. Conversely.
I did send you others, my friend,
Yeah.
that you are choosing not to identify.
I have at least.
You know, the problem
at
is
least
he
one
is
of
in
them.
control.
That
This is
I
his
need to
podcast.
remember that.
You
And-
don't send anything that you wouldn't want to run as the number one story. Just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Note
Okay.
to you.
Hey, I have sent dozens and dozens of stories over the years we've done this
There-
podcast that never make it to the air.
There was a good piece on the
because
gospel.
they're too
and me
smart
both.
for Phil.
There's a good piece on the Gospel Coalition website, which is where I spend my time, as opposed to
You don't like the spell.
It doesn't work well.
It's not as fulfilling.
We have a replacement for this. Is like the soft shell Taco Bell.
This was my Christmas present to Sky, which is a real
a
bell,
real Taco the Bell.
but it's not as satisfying. Well, what do you think?
We'll do the comparison. Everyone, if
Okay.
you're not watching and you're listening, here is the original taco, and now Taco's replacement.
See, but Taco's replacement is analog. Taco's replacement is the LP.
Yeah.
The original Taco is the CD or the MP3. So are we saying we're preferring digital to analog? We're preferring artificial.
I agree with
genuine.
Christian that the analog looks better.
Yeah.
It has some ambiance to it.
Well, maybe you
It
should
does not
reach
sound
for the
better.
analog with one hand while actually pushing the digital button with the other hand.
So we lose all
I think
attempts
it's
at
a good
authenticity.
question. I think it's a good deep question.
Yeah.
Has our brain and wiring changed so much that
Right.
we prefer this experience orally and visually to this experience?
I prefer that just tactily.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun to actually push a real button. To
I
remember,
agree.
some days our children won't even remember buttons, real buttons.
Well, I just got this new
Tactile
car
feedback.
where, you don't have a key anymore. It's a very weird experience just to get in
wrong.
and push a button. I kind of miss the whole key
The
thing.
question is, which would you rather use while peeing standing up? The analog?
I prefer the tactile.
Yeah, tactile. Yeah, so you don't have to look.
Because if
and
I have to pee
distract yourself.
digitally, we're going to have
Why
some
were we
problems.
ringing the bell in the first place?
Because what did you mention?
The Gospel Coalition website.
Gospel
There we
Coalition
go.
website.
Gospel Coalition. Okay, a lot of times we talk about evangelicals. We throw that out.
Or evangelicals. too.
Yeah. Sky throws out evangelical. Christian throws out it's a lovely purple blouse. And then we have. Oh no, I'm getting texts in my pocket. That's so digital. And
tactile.
We also throw out or fundamentalist. Evangelical fundamentalist. What does it mean? So there was an interesting piece in the Gospel Coalition. Do you have an easy definition?
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it.
Here's Sky's easy definition.
An evangelical is somebody who likes Billy Graham. A fundamentalist is somebody who thinks Billy Graham's a liberal. And a liberal is somebody who thinks Billy Graham's a fundamentalist.
wow.
Which is
wonder how
Also,
Billy
what
Graham
was
feels about
written
that.
in that Gospel Coalition website piece.
Almost.
Almost.
So you read this piece.
I read everything, Phil.
And then you send me the Spinken
Yes, because I am sensitive to your abilities.
Oh, now the truth comes out.
And you were off by one letter, one word. An evangelical is someone who likes Billy Graham. A liberal is someone who thinks Billy Graham is a fundamentalist. And a fundamentalist is someone who thinks Billy Graham is apostate.
AKA a liberal.
Well, okay.
Pretty much.
Right.
Is there really
Had I
anyone
edited
that
the
thinks
piece-
Billy Graham is an apostate?
Oh, sure.
Yes, that was the reaction from fundamentalists when he started doing crusades in cooperation with liberal Christians.
Give me an example.
All right, I'll read you exactly what happened.
Why is this German?
Why are we back in Germany?
Sorry, I'm just having too much fun.
He likes saying
So this is a
Spitzsprinkler.
study of how conservative Protestants viewed Billy Graham was usually a pretty good indicator of how they saw themselves and interpreted the virtues and vices of others in the church, especially after Graham's 1957 crusade in Madison Square Garden, in which fundamentalists were dismayed at his partnership with modernists. So there are people who actually reject Billy Graham as apostate because he would partner with liberal Christians.
They didn't think he
and work
was
together.
exclusive enough in who he would engage with. And it only reinforces what I'm becoming convinced of, which is when the history is written, the modern evangelical movement is probably going to span the life of Billy Graham.
Yeah.
And as he's
And that will
nearing
be
the
it.
end of his life, I think the
So does that
evangelical
mean-
experiment in North America is also nearing the end of its...
Does that mean we'll have to choose whether we're going to be liberals or fundamentalists?
I hope not. I
And
hope
that-
there's still a third
th-
alternative.
There has to be a middle.
Right, but it's unidentified.
What is the third alternative?
Well, it used to be evangelical,
Right.
but that's not how it's
But
seen
we're
anymore.
moving beyond that. So
Well,
what are our options
No,
now?
we're just not liking the label. Is that
Right.
what
I
you're
think it's the label
getting at?
is getting really, really tainted. So most people in American culture now think evangelical and fundamentalists are synonymous.
Right.
And so historically and theologically, the word evangelical has a rich and good meaning, but it's completely lost in our culture. It's not useful anymore.
So what are we?
I'm an evangelical. He's an evangelical. You're purple.
I'm follower of Jesus.
That's beautiful.
But that's the truth.
Well, we could ask you some key questions that would probably narrow it down more, but we don't have those key questions.
We could put together a self quiz
Yes.
that people
What
take.
are you? For example, they have a chart done here that was in this article between evangelicals, denominational fundamentalists, and separatist fundamentalists. And I'm not sure exactly how to define the difference between a denominational fundamentalist versus a separatist fundamentalist, which was a more radical rejection of modernity.
Okay.
Part of that is
Would that be like a Quaker
No.
no,
It would be like
or a Mennonite?
more like a Bob Jones type.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So, for
okay.
example, the representatives of evangelicals are Billy Graham, Carl Henry, who's, by the way, the founder of Christianity Today
No,
magazine.
he's the first
Right.
editor of CT.
first editor.
Right.
Billy Graham was the founder.
Right. It still is.
Denominational fundamentalists are people I haven't heard of, given as examples. W.A. Criswell, do you know him?
No.
Jesse Hendley. No. So we don't know any denominational fundamentalists. The example of kind of a representative separatist fundamentalist is Bob Jones University.
Okay.
So, for example, personal separation from sin is advocated by all three. All three of those groups believe you should personally separate yourself from sin. Ecclesiastical separatism from liberalism and modernism means as a body we need to withdraw from modernism
Okay.
and reject modernism.
Basically, we need to be in a Christian bubble.
Kind of, yes. Rejected by evangelicals, rejected by denominational fundamentalists, advocated by separatist fundamentalists. So they're more standoffish.
Okay.
Reject modernism. Relationship of evangelism and social action. So sharing the gospel versus doing good. Evangelicals integrate the two together. Denominational fundamentalists emphasize evangelism over social gospel, and separatists also emphasize evangelism over social gospel. Attitude toward Billy Graham. Evangelicals supportive, denominational fundamentalists supportive, separatist fundamentalists opposed. Attitude toward the National Association of Evangelicals, which is lots of churches coming together across some theological spectrum. Evangelical supportive, denominational fundamentalists ambivalent, not
Okay.
sure. Separatist fundamentalists opposed. Attitude towards self-designation of fundamentalist.
Say that one more time.
Who wants to be called a fundamentalist? How do you
Okay.
feel about that? Evangelicals reject it. No. Denominational fundamentalists ambivalent. Some were willing to be called fundamentalists, others not. Separatist fundamentalists proudly accepted as a badge of honor.
Interesting.
And this is an interesting one. Geographical concentration. Evangelicals, North and Midwest. Denominational fundamentalists and separatist
South.
fundamentalists, the South.
Which that right there should clue you in that there's a lot more going on here than just biblical or theological beliefs.
Right.
It's cultural.
There's
It's
cultural dynamics. There's views about, going all the way back to the founding generation on the role of culture, the role of society, the role of government, the role of the church. And the North and South have always had very different views on those things.
Right. And I read a really interesting story somewhere about how the Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Southern denomination, how it had influenced the entire country, showing how it had spread and how Southern Baptism was present as far north as Minnesota now and all the way to Oregon, not as much in the Northeast, but it's not just the South anymore.
Right.
So that the ideals of a more Southern Christianity
Have migrated.
have spread into rural areas like Western Pennsylvania, which is extremely conservative, has tons of homeschooling. Like Kentucky, where you have the Creation Museum and trying to raise money for the Ark theme park, but then also in suburbia, where you have soccer moms, who are listening more, start out listening to James Dobson, and they're listening to Jerry Falwell, and becoming more influenced by more hyper right-wing conservative talk radio, and they're acting more like Southerners, even if they live in the suburbs of Chicago,
Right.
which is a very interesting
And
dynamic.
then parallel to that, I've been reading this interesting essay on the formation of abolitionist colleges in the Midwest. So coming out of
That's
this,
happening?
no, it happened back in the
happened. I
19th
was like,
century.
that's a new thing?
So back in the mid-late 1800s, the Second Great Awakening struck in the Northeast with Charles Finney and all this revival preaching. And out of that came a very robust and vibrant abolitionist movement led by Christians. The problem
John Brown.
The problem was in the Northeast, believe it or not, in New York and those states, they couldn't get any traction because although they were northern states, people didn't want abolitionists. They were kind of ambivalent towards slavery. So they kept getting kicked out and they ended up moving to the Midwest, to Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, eventually Iowa. And in order to really build their ranks, they started schools. Wheaton College was started by an abolitionist. So were many others, John Knox University, Oneida, a bunch of others. And what was fascinating is these schools created this virulent abolitionist stuff integrated with Christian thought, and rather evangelical Christian thought. But then post the Civil War and post-slavery, that kind of reform instinct continued, and they fought for women's rights. They fought against alcohol, which was a huge problem at the time. They fought for labor rights, for children's rights, all these different things, which then continued into the 20th century. And that's still where you find that impulse toward social justice and social progress. So now some would say it's veered way beyond what biblical justice would argue for, but it's still there in the Midwest
In the DNA.
and in the North, which is what you see in that same thing with fundamentalists who basically say, hey, hands off, we don't want anything to do with society.
Right.
Well, what is the takeaway from this?
Fascinating. What does it mean to Christian?
Yeah, why is it
Right.
important that is it bringing it to our consciousness?
That there is a historical difference between these terms, because particularly in the mainstream press, people use them interchangeably. I hate those fundamentalists / evangelicals. They're all paint this picture, or you pick one. You pick a Bob Jones, or you pick the most extreme example you can think of, and then you say these are those evangelical Christians.
Yeah, but I wouldn't paint it purely as the media's fault, although they do.
I say
They don't handle the words
I like to blame
well.
everything on
I think
the
part of the problem is over the last 30, 40 years, particularly with the emergence of the religious right, there were a lot of fundamentalists who claimed the title of evangelical. And when they call themselves that, that's what the media is going to end up calling them.
Right.
Right.
So, take a Jerry Falwell.
What did he call himself?
He called himself an evangelical.
He did?
And to a degree, you could say he was, because he was highly socially engaged.
Yeah.
Whereas typical
Yeah,
fundamentalists were totally disengaged, but he was highly engaged in Washington and campaigns throughout the country. But he called himself an evangelical, but he espoused highly fundamentalist views. So that's why it got all
Was he pro
muddied.
Billy Graham?
You know, that's a good question. I think he was.
Okay.
But I don't know how.
So there's a whole
enthusiastically.
lot of murkiness.
Exactly.
That's the problem. There aren't we don't have very clean buckets.
Well, and I have to
We
confess
have murky buckets.
that I find myself in a difficult position of trying to figure out, who I am in that muddled mess, and
Right.
and what I identify
Are you pro
with so
Billy
much.
Graham?
I love Billy Graham.
Well,
I
then you're an
actually
evangelical.
was
But see-
completely transformed at one of his rallies as a child.
But Christian, your dilemma is one that I think a lot of us are facing, because if we don't know what kind of Christian we are, if we don't have a last name essentially, then how do you begin to coalesce with like-minded Christians to actually bring change?
Well, what's interesting is I very much know who I am.
But you
in-
don't know to which group you
in
belong.
Christ
Right.
and what I believe, and it's just that I no longer fit in any of these buckets that are given me, really. It's sort of like politically. Jeremy and I have decided we're not Republicans, we're not Democrats. If we search the landscape, and we actually did on the internet, we think we belong in the modern Whig Party.
There's a
which
modern
is-
Whig party?
There is. It's pretty cool. You should read about it.
Guy needs a modern.
But the modern Whig Party is basically people who've gotten together and said, we don't fit in any of these things. And so
Okay.
we're a mixture of kind of
Right.
all
Island of
these.
misfits.
Yeah.
It's hard to vote straight ticket when you're a modern Whig.
Yeah, it is kind of difficult,
Yeah.
which is, I don't know. Anyway, that's my point,
Yes.
is that as I sort of survey this
Right.
landscape,
But that's
Who I am
the
doesn't
political
fit in those
the political analogy is a really good one, because if you don't have an identifiable party affiliation, then how do you ever coalesce to get something
Right.
done?
Right. How do you know who to invite to your rally?
Right.
Because you need a mailing list.
And I think
you
that's
need emails. You need a database.
Forgive the pun, this is one of the fundamental problems facing our generation of Christians who feel like, well, I don't really identify entirely with the fundamentalist / evangelical thing. I'm certainly not a theological liberal either.
Right.
But where do I go to find like-minded people so that we can actually have a voice and influence the culture or the church or the mission?
and I think that it goes even farther into where we worship at church. So like for us as a family, we struggle with finding a place that's a good fit for our family. And, and I know there's always going to be problems in every church where we don't agree or whatever, but I think it's more challenging these days.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, this is exactly what Billy Graham faced in the late 40s, early 50s. The same dilemma where the only options were fundamentalists or liberal. And he came along with his very dynamic personality and charisma and coalesced a group in the middle, and they called themselves neo-evangelicals. And they founded Christianity Today and a number of other ministries, which then for the last half century have been dominant. And now we find ourselves right back in that same situation where we don't have an identifiable middle. So
Right.
what happens
what do
next,
we
I
do?
don't know.
We wait for Sky to figure it out.
That's a lot of pressure.
I'm going to wear a wig. We'll have a wig party.
Well,
Yeah, I'm hanging with Eve or Ev Angelical.
you're sticking to that.
I'm sticking to that because it still applies for now, at least. And then when people don't understand what it means, so they say, oh, you mean so you have to believe in a literal 6-day creation? So you have. I say, well, that's not. No, that's not evangelical.
See, if a
theology.
term isn't useful, then why use it?
Yeah, you're trying to
You
say
gotta fix it.
this
Fix
one
the
I'm sticking
term.
with. but-
Rather than reject it. See, you're a throw it out and start again kind of a guy.
I'm not.
I'm a rehabber. That house has great bones. It looks terrible right now, and everyone's laughing when they drive by, but it has great bones. Let's fix it up.
I remember when Oz Guinness was on the podcast, he made the same argument. I actually
he?
just had dinner with him last week.
Did you?
I did.
Is he still sticking to that argument?
Well, yeah, of course.
How's
but
Oz?
Oz is great. But that's his argument. And to be fair, the word evangelical does have great bones. It has great theological and historical meaning.
It's a mid-century modern.
But but it's not useful. It does need a lot of rehab. And my only argument is, I think our money might be better invested in new construction.
I'm with him.
Nobody has a plan, though.
And so,
No one has a
till we
plan.
figure that out,
No
we probably
one
should just agree that he
has a
should.
plan. You can't burn down your house before you've built a new one.
If you go out into the cyber wilderness and,
Yes.
and put up a flag saying, "Hey, evangelicals, rally here," no one's going to show up.
I know. That's why we have to rehab the old house.
Plus, I think there's a generation gap here also.
Yeah.
We're talking,
Because I'm old enough to be Sky's father.
Well, there's a lot of young
You're
people
10 years older than me.
who think very
I
differently.
didn't say it'd be moral. Sorry.
I don't even think it's possible.
I adopted
I didn't mean to lump you two together.
I was a foster child, and you were a foster baby, and I adopted you, and
I'm not
I
Oliver.
raised
This isn't
you
like
as
a.
my own in the flop houses of London.
Not.
We do our American accents really well. What were you saying, Christian, before I blew you off?
I was basically saying that there's a whole generation of people way younger than us
Yes.
that would vehemently, I think, disagree with that evangelical title.
Yeah, just because what they've heard in the media.
Yeah.
Or what they associate it
And I
with.
think, and Sky is, no offense, really in touch with the younger generation in
Clearly.
a lot of ways.
I just drip relevance.
He does.
Is that your new cologne?
That needs to be on a shirt.
Relevance.
I drip relevance.
You've been attracting millennials like crazy.
Oh yeah, it's like pheromones to them.
Yeah. Relevance from Beyonce. Okay.
All right, what are we talking about?
We got a letter
We did?
I think relevance. It should be a new fragrance from Billy Graham.
from Franklin.
Maybe relevance should
Billy.
be the new movement.
No.
No, that
that's
would be
it's a
bad.
magazine.
There's a magazine. Relevant.
Oh.
And I actually don't like that word.
But you're dripping with it.
I drip with a lot of things I don't like.
It feels a little pretentious
Yeah, I don't
to
like it.
say I'm the one who's relevant.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe you shouldn't wear that
No, I'm
shirt.
not.
Okay, we got a story or a letter from a listener because we talked about the Imitation Game. Remember the Imitation
did.
Game? And I thought this was kind of interesting.
We liked that movie.
You thought this was kind of interesting.
I
We
haven't
both
seen
liked
it
this
yet.
movie. Sky hasn't seen the movie. He's not
gonna-
very helpful here.
Yeah, I was really thankful for this listener writing in.
Yeah, it was interesting. She says, I'm so glad you like the Imitation Game. I was having an interesting disagreement with my roommate about it. Does the movie push a gay agenda? I said no. It honors a man's life, his struggles, his achievements. My roommate said the movie does push a gay agenda. Her thought is that the movie does not clearly show that Alan Turing has a choice to act or not act on his homosexual desires.
Wouldn't that be pushing a different agenda?
If you don't know the story of Alan Turing, who's the father of the modern computer, who worked to crack the Nazi codes during World War II and help shorten the war, potentially by as much as 2 years, they estimate. He was gay, highly closeted at that time because it was illegal to be, an open homosexual in England in the 1950s. Eventually, in the 40s, when the story takes place, the way the movie is framed is in the 1950s, an investigation into him because a detective suspects he's so
There's something up.
mysterious. There's something up. It suspects he's a Soviet spy. And turns out what they discover is, no, he's homosexual.
Right.
And he's arrested. And then as a postscript to the movie, you find out if you read Wikipedia, you know what happened to him. He eventually commits suicide.
Well, he was given the choice, my understanding, of
Prison,
or he could be chemically castrated.
yes. Prison or taking a very strong medication to
And
reduce
forced to pee sitting down for the rest of his life.
something like that.
Yeah, so he took the chemical castration, which apparently had all kinds of effects on his mind, on his personality, and that eventually
And his
may
body.
have led to
Led
his
to his
suicide.
suicide.
But he made that choice because had he gone to prison, he would no longer have been able to work on
his
this
work.
computer.
Right.
And so,
His
he
life's
was,
work would have been over.
Right.
Yes. So her question was, the roommate's question was, does the movie push a gay agenda? Because it doesn't say it's bad to act out on homosexual urges.
Well, how would it say that?
He would
In a postscript?
He would go to a Billy Graham crusade, and he would come. Well, it's telling the story accurately.
Yeah.
The question is if telling the story accurately pushes any agenda at all. And this is a good conversation about art and movies
I'll be the judge of that.
in general. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because it portrays the story accurately. Does it assume? Does the director want us to feel compassion towards Alan Turing? Yes, absolutely. Is that an agenda? No, I don't believe so. I mean, clearly the director wants you to feel that this was unjust, and I think if you don't feel what was done to him was unjust, something's not connected.
Well, yeah,
right.
that seems like more the issue, regardless of what one's theological beliefs might be about human sexuality or marriage. isn't jailing somebody or forcing them to be chemically castrated because of their sexual attraction probably something we could universally now agree is not a good idea?
What would they have done to Alan Turing in Israel in 1500 BC?
Well, I
What
also
would
am
they have
glad
done? Would they have castrated him?
He would have been stoned.
he would have been killed.
Stoned.
Stoned.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Stoned in the
Sorry, yeah, I
non-Colorado
forgot.
sense.
I lost myself for a minute. Wow, you're right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But again, this is a product of
So you can look at this and say, well, they're throwing away biblical commands. They're disregarding the Bible.
To use your own words, Phil, that would be living in the wrong testament.
Oh! Okay, that was a good one.
What makes me sad, honestly, as I hear this is I did grow up in a very cultural area of the country, culturally conservative. Thank
yes.
you. Area of the country, and in a small Southern Baptist church. And my mindset was, this is wrong. These people are bad. They should go through hormone therapy, or they should never act on their urges, or. And as I've kind of grown and learned who God is,
at that point, would you have found this movie offensive?
At that point, I would have been extremely uncomfortable, because I would not know how to handle this, because it would have been in juxtaposition.
Okay.
So I would have seen the injustice that was done to this man, which I think is incredibly sad. But at the same time, I would found myself being compassionate for somebody that I strongly disagree with. The way he lives.
Right.
And so that would be a very uncomfortable place for me to be in. And I just find it very sad that there's still a lot of that mentality out there, that that the injustice of that would not break your heart.
Right.
You're thinking more about.
Yeah, you can look at injustice and you can look at how do you treat people compassionately. How do you walk in someone else's shoes? How do you get a feeling for what it's like to be them without endorsing every last thing that they do, without endorsing behavior? And I think we have to. I had a conversation with someone recently, actually a Christian film critic, and I forget what film we were talking about, but it was Boyhood, which I haven't seen, but it deals frankly with things that most teenagers do at some point, whether it's dabbling in drugs or dabbling in sex or And his point of view was that Christians should not see that movie, that he needed to see that movie because he's a Christian film critic, so he can tell Christians what's in it, but now that he's told them, they shouldn't go see that movie, and he was upset that a friend of his had said, yeah, I like that movie. And it's like, well, you're not a film critic, so you shouldn't have gone to see it. And we kind of disagreed on that point, because I said, isn't it valuable to actually listen to someone tell the story of their life the way they see the world, even if you disagree with it.
Right.
And we didn't quite agree on
Isn't
that point.
it, when you see biographies like that, or you read history well, or you get to know people well, even neighbors, friends, family, and frankly, as you look at Scripture and study the lives of different people in the Bible or the people that Jesus engages with, the thing that becomes more and more obvious is that people are multidimensional. And we have to move, and hopefully move the church beyond this idea that everyone is just a single identity.
In Interstellar, people are 5-dimensional.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's part of the problem. Like, as you confessed when you were younger in that part of the country, you probably had a single-dimensional view of a lot of gay people.
Yeah.
They were just gay. That was it, and that was the only thing you see them as.
Right.
Whereas you look at the story of Alan Turing, and you realize, okay, yeah, he was gay. He was also brilliant. And he also helped save countless lives because of what he did in World War II.
Well, and he was genuine and honest and real.
So similarly, you look at the Gospels and you say, well, Peter was a liar and a betrayer. Well, yeah, he was. But he was also a disciple and faithful and a friend and a leader and all these other things to him. And every one of us has multiple dimensions to who we are. And I think part of our responsibility as Christians is ultimately coming to see people, whether alive or historical, as multidimensional, complicated people, nonetheless all created in the image of God. And that's what these kinds of stories and movies help us do. Even if you don't agree with everything about a person's life, you don't agree with everything about their agenda, they're complicated, and there are things about them that should be valued and other things that you have to be more critical of. And there's probably not a historical person, even a hero, that we can think of that didn't have some element to their life that we would have to go, that's a problem.
Yeah, and I will say that I've had to fight my whole life against pushing back and sheltering my eyes and ears and everything from anything that could negatively influence me. That was what I was taught. And so it's very difficult for me I've had to force myself to get to know others that don't look like me, act like me, sound like me, or believe like me. Right. And as I've done that, it has opened my mind. It's why I'm no longer this dyed-in-the-wool, toe-the-line Republican. Sorry, Dad.
He's not listening,
He's not
is he?
listening. Anyway, I do still love you, but
That's why you're wearing purple.
I'm sort of,
she's not red, she's not blue.
Yeah.
She's a wig. It's the wig
She's
color.
the wig, the color of the wigs.
We
And
have
it's
to-
not a donkey or an elephant. It's a purple zebra.
What would it be? What's halfway between a donkey and an elephant?
what has happened to
A
this?
pygmy hippopotamus.
A hippo?
Pygmy hippo.
Please
That's my
don't call
favorite
me
animal.
a pygmy hippo.
That's my favorite animal is pygmy hippo.
Why?
It is kind of
'Cause they're
purple
a
when
baby.
you think
Have
about
you
it.
ever seen a
Yes,
baby pig?
I have.
They are
They're
pretty
the
adorable.
cutest
I've
things
seen
in
at
the
Lincoln
world.
Park Zoo. I saw one.
The cutest
I don't
things
think
in
they're
the
that
world.
cute.
They
They're kind of slimy
They're
looking.
kind of cute.
I just want a hippo I can hug. And you can't hug a real hippo because they're actually mean.
They
But
are.
a baby pygmy hippo,
Those would be pretty
that's
darn cute.
darling. Or a baby pygmy manatee would also be fun to hug.
They look
You
squishy,
could carry around in a bag and hug it.
but they're green.
Okay, so you were saying?
So I'm saying,
They're not green.
Still need to come
aren't
up
they?
with
Maybe they're just underwater, gray.
Yeah, they're underwater, but things grow on them. They're so slow. I don't want any animal that's so slow things grow on it.
No sloth for you, pal.
No.
What about people?
I don't even
Things
remember
grow on
what I
us?
was saying. I
Just
don't
the
even
ones
think it
that don't
matters
move.
anymore.
Rolling Stones and all, gather no moss.
Okay, we have one last story, and it's a good one. It's a good one.
Can't wait.
If you think it's bad, wait a minute. I had a nice little write-up on this. If you think it's bad never mind, because I didn't do the other story that set this one up. From the world of Christian music,
Yes.
we have one less Christian. Dum, dum, dum.
Well, that's a theological debate, isn't it?
Here's the report. I've co-founded one of the most popular Christian rock bands ever, and I'm now an atheist. It is a blog post written on the Patheos Atheist website this week by George Perdikis.
From the Newsboys.
Yeah, one of the co-founders of the Newsboys is an atheist. So, and a number of people have blogged about this since it posted because he kind of goes off on a tirade against Christian celebrity. Here's a few quotes. He says, I always felt uncomfortable with the strict rules imposed by Christianity. All I wanted to do was create and play rock and roll, and yet most of the attention I received was focused on how well I maintained the impossible standards of religion. I wanted my life to be measured by my music, not by my ability to resist temptation. And the Christian music scene is populated by many people who act as though they have a direct hotline to a God who supplies them with the answers to the universe. There seems to be more ego and narcissism amongst Christian musicians than their secular counterparts. And
there's more?
the truth is, from someone who knows what went on then and what goes on now, the Newsboys aren't as holy as they profess. Instead of wearing a mask of righteousness, they should acknowledge that they are struggling as much as everyone else. Dum, dum, dum.
There's probably a lot of truth in what he said.
Well, hold on.
Dum, dum, dum.
This
is hot.
He's making an argument for hypocrisy, which I think anybody who knows anything about Christian celebrity world will go,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But
a lot of truth.
that's not necessarily the same as an argument
As saying I'm
for
no longer Christian.
atheism,
Dum, dum, dum.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, when he starts out
So
by
he
saying,
just decided to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
when he starts out by saying, all I wanted to do was create and play rock and roll, he didn't really want to be in a Christian band in the first place. So so some people have really used this as, wow, we really have to be careful about how we put people up on pedestals and we turn, musicians into celebrities.
You
Have you
think?
ever spoken or written about that?
Just a little.
Sky?
Not so much on the music front. But,
No, not on the music front. We
Right.
do it there too.
Right. Well, the musicians, Christian musicians, are really the priests and bishops of evangelicalism. Oh. Because they're the ones who really communicate our theology and views on
What are
things.
the pastors doing? What's John Piper doing?
Well,
he's not communicating?
No, there are, but they're
Just not successfully?
The type of person who reads a John Piper book is probably different than the type of person who buys a Newsboys album or goes to a Newsboys concert.
This is true.
Yes, it is.
What you say. All right, here's my I think we're kind of missing the point when we just jump to the isn't Christian music or the Christian music industry hypocritical. Now we know it from the inside that it's true. George Perdikis, if that is in fact his name, or at least if I'm pronouncing it right, co-founded.
He's Australian, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Australian.
Well, then you need to do this in an Australian accent.
I don't do that. I'm not allowed to do that.
I know you can't.
I'm not allowed to do that. I have a restraining order. He was in the Newsboys from 1987 till 1990.
They go back to 87?
Yes, that's when he, and basically right out of high school.
Wait a second. He's been out of the Newsboys since 1990?
He left the Newsboys before
That's like 25 years ago.
Before they got popular.
They got popular when I was in high school.
They were not even popular before he was out of it.
Well, why is he just now telling the story now?
Because somebody got him to write something to make them look bad. None of the original members are still in the Newsboys.
Really? It's like Menudo? They just cycle through them?
It's like Menudo. Once you hit puberty and you have to shave, you can't be in the band anymore. No, Peter Furler retired to go off and do a solo career.
Okay.
And then they rejiggered everything. And it's now the lead singer is one of the singers from DC Talk, and it's some other guys. And it's, whatever.
Just carry on the name.
I don't follow Christian music.
It's like the Beach Boys, Now it's, 3 girls and a dog.
So is this like two separate things? Like he was this Christian musician, but now 25 years later in life, He
was never a Christian musician. He started playing. He was jamming with Peter Furler in high school. They formed a band. He was living with the Furlers, and the Furlers' parents, he complains, were fundamentalists, and they communicated to the boys that the only valid music was music that praised God. So that's what they started writing and performing. He's not making any judgments about Peter Furler, and I've met Peter Furler. He's a cool guy. He's good friends with Steve Taylor. They're doing an album together right now. Actually just put it out. He's a cool guy. I'm sure there were struggles in the band early on.
They're all young boys.
Because they're all young boys, and they weren't all necessarily,
Christian.
on the same page.
Right.
This is what we're doing right now. And that's been the case with lots of bands, whereas, the drummer, I think he's smoking dope, but, we're on the middle of our tour, so we can't get a new drummer. What are we going to do? And it's tricky because you're set out in front of people as role models.
Right.
So if you go play at a church, the senior pastor wants to know that you're on the up and up. Which is why Gungor lost gigs in churches because Michael Gungor said he wasn't sure he held to a literal Adam and Eve. And immediately, we don't want you to sing your great songs to our youth group if we don't 100% agree with all your theology.
So, Frank, to put it simply, there's an economic incentive for Christian bands to pretend, to fake it.
There's an economic incentive for pastors. If you're having a bad week, you can't
Same thing. Well, this is the problem with
out your sermon.
Professional ministry, I'm using air quotes, in that it does create a facade that you have to maintain in order to continue on the line that you're going, which is kind of scary.
Begins to feel like prison.
And it's a particularly difficult thing for a young person who's still trying to figure out their faith and their identity and their beliefs and all of that, to suddenly have this whole enterprise of relying on you being able to present yourself as this completely orthodox, church-loving Christian who keeps their morality in absolute step with Scripture. That's a tough thing for anybody at that age.
Right. So he says, I carved out a life for myself away from the church, starting in 1990, 24 years ago, after leaving the band, before anyone had even heard of it. I began my own voyage of inquiry into what I believed. My perception started to transform when I became interested in cosmology in 1992. I soon found myself fascinated by one of the write-ups in the Christian Post. It said he pursued cosmetology.
That's what I remember reading that. I was like, this is going to take a whole nother turn, isn't it?
It was cosmology.
I want to point out that was not Christianity Today.
No, the Christian Post.
It's a totally different publication.
That. So Christian Post, egg on you. There's a difference between cosmetology and cosmology. I found myself fascinated by the works of Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, Brian Cox, and Richard Dawkins.
Wait a minute. Nobody knew Neil deGrasse Tyson in 1990.
He's been around for a while, but he hasn't been well known.
No.
I think he's making this up.
Yeah.
I learned so much and was
history.
Was blown away by all the amazing scientific discoveries and facts. What? Space? I didn't know about space. Forget the Bible. When my marriage dissolved in 2003, I turned my attention to human psychology. By 2007, I renounced Christianity once and for all and declared myself an atheist. Why? Because of science. And Peter Furler.
And the breakup of a marriage.
And the breakup
and a
of a
bad
marriage.
experience in the Christian celebrity
And the
subculture.
fact, he never even got to the celebrity
That's true.
subculture.
But
He
his
didn't
friends
make it
were
that
there,
far.
right? His friends were there.
I know people who know people that say...
So he's enjoying his 15
Michael
minutes.
W. Smith isn't as cool a guy as you think he is.
He's enjoying his 15 minutes of fame.
I know. This makes me crazy. I'm sorry. This makes me crazy. But I agree that we put celebrities up on pedestals. That's... we do that with
That's
everybody.
why they're celebrities.
We do it with Miley Cyrus, and she jumps on a wrecking ball and swings around.
Well, and you can't blame the atheist community for wanting a poster boy.
No.
They got enough.
We want dirt. We want dirt on that Christian thing. Give us, what's it really like on the inside? Oh, you who were there for 36 months, 25 years ago.
I mean, their whole mission is to debunk anything that has to do with Christianity.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm mad as heck, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
you can just call a spade a spade. Keep us all on the narrow road.
I have a question, which he doesn't talk about in this article, which is what has he done since he left the Newsboys in 1990? What has his career been, or what has his work been about?
Well,
What I'm trying to is he a frustrated artist who never really got it because he
I thought it implied that he was a psychologist.
I left the band in 1990 and went back to Adelaide. There I got married, taught guitar, played pubs and clubs, built homes, and had 2 beautiful daughters.
Okay.
And then got divorced. And then went to cosmetology school. Now he does makeup for Richard Dawkins.
I mean, it sounds a little bit like sour grapes.
Maybe. Well, it's what's interesting is if you read the comments.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to read the comments. Typically depressing,
Right?
But you read the comments. The number of people, and this is the atheist section of the Patheos website, who say, "My first concert was the Newsboys," or "My first concert was Whiteheart," or "My first concert was some other Christian band," and now I'm an atheist too. So Christian music creates atheists.
Well, that's an argument that doesn't hold water.
That doesn't hold much water. No. What was your first concert?
Do I have to confess this? My first concert was Wham.
I got you beat.
Wow.
I went with my older brother, and my 2 female cousins who were big fans of George Michael and whatever the other guy's name was. Like 1987-ish. What year
That
was
wouldn't
that?
cause atheism necessarily, but
Hey, Jitterbug. That's a good song, my
it
friend.
wasn't in the I Want Your Sex days, was it?
No,
That's George
that's George
Michael.
Michael after
Oh, that was
Wham.
George Michael solo.
Solo.
Post Wham.
Mine
Post
was
Wham.
REM.
I was really
REM.
concerned. Oh,
That's
Yeah,
respectable.
that's pretty hip.
That's respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what
It was a
mine
great
I
concert.
I honestly can't. It would have been Christian.
Clearly.
It might have been Steve Taylor. It might have been DeGarmo and Key. It might have been Resurrection Band. It was probably at the Odeum in Villa Park. And it was probably a Christian band.
I saw Wham at Poplar Creek. Remember Poplar Creek?
Yeah, that's gone.
Now that you said that, I have to retract.
Uh-oh.
Yeah?
My first one was Keith Green.
No way.
Wow.
Yes, it was. I'm sitting here going, wait
I
a minute.
never saw Keith Green live.
I saw him in New York. It was a big arena, and he played the lights out of that piano.
Oh, yeah.
It was a
Always
very, very amazing concert.
Around what year would that have been?
That would have been like 83.
What year did he
82,
die?
83.
He died in 82.
Then
That was a really cool concert,
well,
wasn't it?
It would have been right before he died. It was right before he died.
Live from the pearly gates.
No, it was right before he died. I graduated
Holy
in
cow.
84, so I know it wasn't 80,
You were in high
81, and it was, so I was thinking 82, 83, but
Oh, that's pretty cool.
it was very cool.
Okay, I got to wrap this up. What should I sing about?
I think we all know.
We all know.
Yeah.
What, the Germans?
The Das Sprinkle or whatever that thing is.
I don't remember the right word.
Sat sprinkle, no, sit sprinkle.
Oh, boy.
That rhymes with tinkle.
Hey, buddy, don't be a clown. Don't get caught peeing sitting down in Germany 'cause they think you're a wimp. Or you just might not be able to hold your shrimp that you ate on the cruise to Jamaica. Going with a Christian pop star who wants to take you to worship his celebrity and not the Bible. But he might not know anything because you're not reliable. If you were only in the Newsboys for about 36 months and the band went on for another 2.5 decades after you left, I'm not sure you're an authority on what's going on, and you're really not paying attention, but I hope you made at least a couple of bucks off your article on Patheos.com. See you next time.